We started talking last week about baggage. One of those things that a lot of us, we don't like to carry around. If we go on vacations or go on trips, it's like the most tedious part of that trip we don't want to deal with. And we talked about different kinds of baggage that we have and having to deal with some of those things. But we're talking about baggage, not the stuff that you put your clothes in and carry and put in your vehicles or check in when you get to the airport. We're talking about the feelings and the emotions that you experience, that you have from past experiences. And sometimes often it's a negative thing. Somebody has treated me in a bad way. Somebody has said something hurtful to me. Somebody has done something multiple times, and I'm holding on to the memories of those things, the emotions that are attached to those things. It's not necessarily the actions themselves that I keep holding on to. It's the feelings, it's the memories that I attach to those things that I keep carrying with me. And the problem is that I start to view myself through my baggage, or I carry this into other relationships and other parts of my life. It starts affecting the way I treat my spouse, the way I treat my kids, the way I talk to my coworkers, the kind of attitude that I have. The stuff that I carry with me has a profound impact on almost every aspect of my life. The emotions that I hold on to that I never really deal with, and just keep holding on to, whether it's something that happened to me personally or something that happened to somebody I care about. The more that I hold on to those things, the heavier they get and the more they continue to impact my life. That's what we started talking about last week. And some of the reasons for that, some of the sources of that. We talked about some myths, some lies that we buy into that cause us to hold on to our baggage, and the truths that we need to hold on to instead. And I want to remind you of those this morning. I want to remind you, if you weren't here last week, you didn't watch this on our YouTube channel, I want you to remind all of us this morning of 3 truths that all of us can know to be true. And the first one is that I am loved. That God loves me with a passion. That it doesn't matter my past choices or things that happen to me. It doesn't matter my gender, my skin color, my bank account, whether I've been involved in church or whether I'm completely unchurched. That my God loves me no matter what. That He loves me as I am. He wants better for me, but He loves me always as I am. I am loved. I am significant. I matter. I'm important. I make a difference. I mean something to this world. I mean something to the people in my lives. I mean something to my God. There's a reason that I'm here. There's a purpose that I have in this life. I am significant, and I am empowered. I'm not a failure. I'm not inept. I have talents. I have abilities. I have gifts that God has given me. I'm not useless. There are things that I have and things that I can do that God wants me to use for a specific purpose. I am empowered. And I want us to remember that. I want us to keep reminding ourselves of those 3 things. So you're going to do me a favor real quick this morning. We're going to remind ourselves together. Everybody on your feet. Stand up where you're at right now. Let's go. Everybody up. At least stretch and wake up, if nothing else, right? Repeat after me. I am loved. I am significant. I am empowered. Now, that was pretty good. Let's say those things like we actually believe them this time, okay? I'm not talking about volume. I'm talking about with your heart. Do I really believe these things to be true? Then I need to say these things like I believe they're true. I am loved. I am significant. I am empowered. Now, here's what I'm going to make you do this morning. You're going to tell somebody beside you, even if it's a total stranger, you're going to look at that person and you're going to say, you are loved, you are significant, you are empowered. On your mark, you say, go.
All 3 of you. Where are the hand signals?
Okay. Have a seat. Have a seat. If nothing else today, you can tell somebody when you leave Flagstone today, hey, somebody told me that I'm loved and I'm significant, I'm empowered. I hope you know that about yourself. I hope if you've never believed those things about yourself before, I hope you start to today. We need that reminder this morning because there's all sorts of There's all sorts of people that we encounter and circumstances that we deal with on a daily basis that Satan uses to try to convince us that those three statements that we just made are anything but true. There are people that we work with. There are people in our neighborhoods. There are people, even sometimes in our own families, that Satan uses to convince us, either by saying something completely opposite of those three statements, or by just the way that they treat us. They make us feel unloved. They make us feel like we don't matter. They make us feel inept. And I want you to know this morning, you are loved. You are significant. You matter. And you are empowered. To be honest, one of the places that we should feel the most loved and the most significant is within our families. And yet for many of us, it's in that family dynamic. It's within our families because of past experiences with our families or because of words that were shared in our families. We become convinced by people in our own families that we're not loved, that we don't matter, that we're failures. That's what we want to address this morning, is our family baggage. Recognizing that there's all sorts of sources for the baggage that we carry, the emotions and the memories that we carry because of experiences within our families. And I want to kind of preface this morning by saying that my purpose this morning is not to harp on how bad your family experience was. And my purpose is not to dredge up a whole bunch of hurtful memories. My purpose is not to create problems that aren't there. I just want us to be honest together. Of all places where we can hopefully relate to each other is within our church family. We can recognize, man, there's some things that I'm carrying because of experiences within my own family that I need, it's affecting my life. I need to start letting some of those things go. For some of us, we experienced divorce in our family, and for whatever reason, that maybe we felt like somehow that splitting apart of our parents was somehow our fault. Or maybe we had one parent that tried to pit us against the other one and use us as leverage. And maybe they didn't intend to do that, but they constantly competed with the other parent for our affection. Maybe we just felt unwanted by whatever parent left. Some of us dealt with abusive situations, and because of that, we have this sense of fear, this sense of guilt. We learned to never trust anyone because the people that we were supposed to be able to trust the most broke that trust in a horrible way. Some of us grew up in homes where there was alcohol abuse, some kind of substance abuse, prescription pills abused. We felt in that place where we were supposed to feel the most safe, we felt the most unsafe. We never knew what mood to prepare for from whatever parent it was, from whatever family member it was. We never knew exactly how to deal with that. We felt bad for them and felt unable to do anything about it. We felt embarrassed. Some of us grew up we had issues with rules in our families. Some of us may look at our family experiences and there were too many rules. We couldn't even keep track of all of them, and the consequences for breaking any of the rules was just awful, and it felt restricted, and we felt confined, and we felt on edge all the time. Boy, I sure want to make sure that I don't screw up, and I'm scared to death if I do. Some of us had the exact opposite experience. We honestly didn't have enough rules, and I know there's some of us that hear that and go, man, that would have been awesome, but it's not. For some of us, we grew up in such a lax family atmosphere and a family dynamic that it just felt chaotic, and we felt like nobody really cared about us or really wanted the best for us. The people in our own families didn't really love us. Some of us just grew up in a family where we were constantly made to feel guilty about whatever it was that we failed at. Whatever didn't go the way it was supposed to, we felt like we were a bad person. We felt like the only way that we could get love and get acceptance from people within our family is to do things the right way or do things the way that they wanted us to. And if we didn't, they would just pile on this guilt and make us feel awful about ourselves, like we weren't loved and we weren't accepted. Some of us grew up in families where there was nothing but criticism. Parents to kids, siblings to each other, kids back to parents. We're constantly critical and picking on each other and looking at all the faults and only seeing the things in each other that was wrong with each other. And that's all we talked about. That was all our communication was about. And we were made to feel like I'm a bad person, and the only way that I can get love and get acceptance was to do things just right, or at least do things the way you want me to. And we had this feeling of resentment within our families. And maybe some of us experienced, something similar to this video clip that I'm going to show you right now. Guys?
Sometimes we pick up baggage from people who love us dearly. They just don't realize that their words cut like a knife.
Son,
Hey, Dad.
what happened out there?
The ball slipped. The lights got in my eyes.
The lights got in your eyes.
Yeah.
You know that's what cost us the game, don't you?
Yeah.
The ball slipped. How many times have I gotten up in the morning before 5 a.m. before I go to work on the stuff with you, huh? There were scouts out there. You realize that?
Dad, the ball slipped.
The ball slipped.
It did. I mean, what do you
Hey,
want me
Coach. Huh? No. Butterfingers, yeah. We're gonna work with them. Uh-huh. All right. See you later. Are you crying?
No.
Well, don't. Pull it together. People are watching. I want you to grab your stuff. I'm going to go to the car and I'll meet you there, all right?
Dad.
I'm just disappointed in you, all right? These were our dreams, right? Grab your stuff.
And our parents, they don't mean to hurt us. It's just they've got their own baggage. And when you don't deal with baggage, you pass it on. And for us, we have to learn to find our self-worth only in our relationship with Christ. And if we don't, we pick up more baggage.
Some of you may be thinking, boy, that's awful. I would never talk to my kids that way. And some of you know exactly what that was like. And again, I don't want to harp on all the negative things about our families. But we can be honest. Most of us, have some kind of family baggage. We have some experiences that we're carrying with us, and we're carrying the emotions from those things. And the things that I've shared with you this morning, that's not even an exhaustive list. That's not every single way that families, in some form or fashion, have caused us to carry some negative experiences with us. But the more of this baggage that we carry, the more that we experience that criticism or that guilt or the abuse or whatever it was, we start picking up those memories and we start holding on to them. And we start to develop a feeling of resentment towards our family. And then that carries over into our own families nowadays. And it carries into our friendships. We start feeling anger. And we lash out at people for almost no reason. We can't figure out why. We just walk around being angry all the time. And some of us just walk around feeling guilty. We are constantly apologizing, feeling like we never can measure up. And we go through depression, we go through anxiety. We hope we don't let people down because we've constantly been made to feel like we always let people down. And we carry these things with us to our jobs. We carry these things with us to our kids' ball games. We carry these things with us to school. We carry them with us everywhere we go. And we try to pretend that they're not there. We try to pretend that they're not weighing us down. And we're just burdened with baggage. So what do we do about that? How do I put this down? How do I turn loose of it? How do I keep my baggage from affecting my marriage, from affecting my relationship with my kids and my parents? How do I keep this from affecting my connections with my friends, my coworkers? How do I keep this baggage from changing my attitude completely? Let me give you some action steps this morning. Some ways that we can start working on this, to start letting go of some of these things that have been weighing us down for so long. And one of the first things that we have to do, one of the first ways that we start letting go of this family baggage is to process it. I need to acknowledge that I have family baggage in the first place, that I am carrying these burdens, that they are weighing me down. I need to acknowledge that there's thoughts and emotions that I've attached to past experiences, and they're affecting my life. I need to start figuring out what it is that's causing this anger and this resentment and this guilt and this anxiety and this fear. What's at the source of it? There's a story that I've told this church family. We've gone through this story before in the Old Testament, in the book of 1 Kings. And there's a prophet whose name is Elijah. And things were going really well for Elijah until his life was threatened. He thought that somebody was going to kill him. And he's so overcome with fear that he forgets about all the good stuff that's been happening and all the good things that God has been doing in his life. And he focuses solely on the fear, and he takes off running. And he runs. He's on the run for days and days and days. And he finds himself in a cave in a mountain in the wilderness. And while he's there all alone, cowering in fear and anxiety and depression, God speaks to him. And it says in 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 9, the word of the Lord came to him and said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Elijah, you're cowering in a cave. You look worried. You look stressed. You're all alone. What are you doing here? What's the real question? How'd you get to this point, Elijah? What brought you here where you are now? That's the question that I need to ask myself. If I've got resentment, if I got anger, if I've got anxiety, if I've got depression, and I recognize that those things are a factor in my life, one of the first things I need to do is ask the question, what am I doing here? How did I get to this point? What brought me to where I am right now? And it may be things that happen in my family. It may be words that were said to me. There may be experiences that I dealt with within my family. But I need to be honest about that and recognize what brought me to where I am now. That's what processing is all about. I'm looking at what caused me to be where I am. And until I can acknowledge that I'm even carrying family baggage, until I can acknowledge that there's something at the source of how I'm feeling right now and how I'm treating other people, I'm just going to keep carrying it. And it's going to continue to be a burden for me. I've got to start asking the question, how did I get to this point? What brought me here? I need to own my own actions. Once I've processed, once I've recognized, man, it was this experience, or it was this part of my family dynamic, it was this part of, it was these memories, it was these words that have caused me to feel this way. Then I need to start dealing with that. And in the process of processing, I need to also learn to own my own actions. And what I mean by that is this: it would be really easy for me to be satisfied with just blaming all my marriage struggles, all my friendship problems, all my addictions, all the times that I happen to rub people the wrong way in some form or fashion, all the struggles I have with my own self-image. I could blame all that on my upbringing, on my family experiences, on the memories of what happened to me when I was younger and the family I grew up in. And I can say, I've got this baggage, I'm carrying this baggage around, and it's a burden for me. And it's because of, my parents getting divorced, or it's because of the substance abuse that was going on in our home. And there's nothing I can do about it. Yeah, I smart off to people and I rub people the wrong way, but it's because of my family background. It's really my parents' fault that I'm the way that I am. I need to own my actions. If I'm mistreating people, if I'm losing my temper, if I'm giving in to some of my own addictions, I need to recognize, yeah, the family baggage may be a factor, but it's still my choice as to how I deal with that baggage. Does that make sense? There's a story that Jesus tells in the New Testament, Matthew chapter 25. He tells a story about 3 guys that were given some money by their boss before their boss went off on a trip. And the instructions were, take this money and go do something with it. Hopefully invest it, hopefully make more money. 2 of the servants did that. They invested it, they worked it, they ended up, by the time the boss got back in town and had him report, they had more money to give him back. Here's the money that you gave me. Here's this much more money that I'm giving you in return. There was one guy who was so scared that he might fail and so scared that things might go wrong that he took the money that was given to him and he just hid it. He just buried it in the ground. He didn't lose it, but he didn't do anything with it. And when his boss comes back, he brings the money back to him. Here's what you gave me. I haven't lost anything. And he even goes into explaining. He says, you know what? The reason that I did this, the reason I buried it in the ground, is because I know you're a hard guy. You're mean. And not only are you kind of mean and hard and tough, but you also, you reap what you didn't sow. You expect things from you have unrealistic expectations, I guess, is what we would say nowadays. You expect to get things in return that you didn't even work for. And I was scared to death that I wasn't going to have anything in return, so I didn't even try. I just buried it in the ground. Here it is back. And his boss responds to him and calls him wicked, calls him lazy. And it says in Matthew chapter 25, beginning verse 26, so you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. Well, then you should have put my money at least on deposit with the bankers, so when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. What he's telling his worker is, even if your perception was accurate, even if I am a hard guy, even if I do have unrealistic expectations, you still had a choice of what you could do with the money. And you chose to do nothing. It's not my fault that you didn't do anything with this money. That was your choice. Here's the point. I may have had negative family experiences. There may have been just awful things said to me by people in my family. There may have been broken trust. There may have been anger. There may have been all sorts of things that I had to deal with within my family. I may have been handed armloads of baggage in my lifetime. But it is still my choice as to what I do in response to that baggage. It's still my choice as to how I deal with it. It's still my choice whether or not I choose to hold on to it. That's me. That has nothing to do with my family. That's my choice. And I need to own my actions. I need to decide I'm not going to deal with this anymore. I'm going to let it go. I'm going to process through it and get rid of it. I'm not going to allow the baggage that I've been handed to affect my attitude and my relationships anymore. That's my choice. And if I've said hurtful things to other people, if I've treated people in a bad way, if I have messed up my own family dynamic in some form or fashion because of the baggage that I'm carrying, I need to own that. I need to apologize. I need to want to do better. I may have been given a lot of baggage, but I don't have to hand it on to somebody else. I need to own my actions. And the third thing I need to do in order to get rid of this is to forgive it. I need to choose to forgive. Whatever family member or members has caused me hurt in the past, I need to forgive them. And I recognize as I say those words, there's some of you that are sitting there going, well, that's easier said than done. Yeah, it is. It's a whole lot easier for me to stand up here and go, you know what, you should forgive, than for you to actually do it. I recognize that. And yet it's what we're called to do. Colossians chapter 3 and verse 13, the Apostle Paul tells the church, bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone. Whatever it was, I need to forgive it. I need to let it go. I need to quit bringing it up. I need to quit holding it over somebody else's head. I need to quit reminding them of how they might have hurt me in the past. I need to quit reminding myself of that. I need to quit viewing that person through the lens of whatever hurtful thing it is that I experienced when we were in the family together. I need to let go of my anger and my resentment. I need to forgive. And I want you to understand, this is not about, I'm not saying we need to pretend that nothing ever happened, that we need to pretend that there's no baggage that we've been carrying around, that we need to pretend that we weren't hurt in some way. That's not what I'm saying at all. This is about me choosing not to keep punishing that person for giving me that baggage in the first place. This is about me choosing not to keep blaming that person for the things that are happening in my life. This is about me choosing to say, this was hurtful, this is painful, but I'm letting it go. I'm forgiving. I'm not going to bring it up anymore. I'm not going to dwell on it anymore. I'm not going to hold this against you anymore. Man, folks, if we can start doing that, these will start dropping. We'll start letting them go. And just as a side note, I've shared this with the church family before. I want to remind you again. Forgiveness is not up to the person I'm forgiven to ask for it. I feel like that was a horrible way to say that. Let me try that again. It is not a requirement for the person that needs forgiving to come to me and say, would you please forgive me? Forgiveness is not up to them, it's up to me. I'm choosing not to punish you. Whether you ask for it, whether you even acknowledge there was a problem or not, I'm not going to hold it against you. That's what forgiveness is all about. And that's what I need to be willing to do. I may have every right in this world to be bitter, to be angry, to hold this against you and hold it over your head, but I also have the power and the opportunity to forgive and to let go and to show the grace of Jesus because I've received it myself. And I have the opportunity to show it to you. And when I can start doing that, this baggage is going to get a lot lighter. But until I choose to let go and to forgive, this baggage is going to continue to weigh me down. Now, in the process of forgiving, I may also need to set some healthy boundaries. Just because I forgive someone, just because I'm not going to punish someone for how they treated me or what experience I may have had, doesn't mean that I automatically have to just clean the slate and just let them back into my life in exactly the same way that they were before. I may have forgiven this person, but I may still be struggling with letting go of the baggage that I'm carrying because of this person. It doesn't just happen. We don't just go, oh, you're forgiven, and everything's fine. It's like nothing ever happened anymore. It doesn't work that way. Scars take some time to heal. Wounds can be deep sometimes, and sometimes we need to set up some healthy boundaries to help us heal and to help that relationship mend in a more healthy way. It is perfectly fine for me to set a healthy boundary in my relationship with that person. And maybe that's, we're not going to be in the same room alone together. I'm not going to show up for this particular family reunion because it's just going to cause conflicts and fights. I'm going to just text and email you when I talk to you for a while because our voices start to get raised and we start to get mad at each other. Whatever it is, you come up with a boundary, knowing this is how far I'm going to go in this relationship right now. I'm not holding this against you. I'm just recognizing that if I completely allow you completely back into my life, we're going to go down the same path again, and I don't want to do that. So I need to set some boundaries up first. That's fine, folks. It makes me think of what the Apostle Paul mentioned in 1 Corinthians chapter 6. When he's talking to the church there and he says everything, he was quoting them, everything is permissible for me. Everything's okay. I can do whatever I want. And he says, you know what? That may be true, but not everything is beneficial. Everything is permissible for me, but I will not be mastered by anything. I think this principle can apply to setting healthy boundaries for ourselves. I'm not going to allow myself to be mastered, to be controlled by the hurt that I've experienced before. The distrust that I've experienced, the baggage that I'm carrying that I'm trying to get rid of. It may not be beneficial for me or even for you for us to have the same dynamic that we used to have. Let's take some time. Let's ease our way back into this connection, this relationship. I can forgive you. I can let go of my anger and my hurt. But that doesn't mean that I have to run right back to exactly the way things were before. It's okay for me to set some healthy boundaries. It might even be beneficial. The last thing I need to do is I need to stop the cycle. As we saw in the video clip a second ago, sometimes the baggage that is created for me by someone in their family stems from the baggage that they are carrying from their past. I may have people in my family who, in their own family dynamic, before I was ever around, had to experience criticism and guilt and abuse and divorce and whatever else. And it created baggage for them to carry, and they have brought that into our family and are now handing it to me. And if I don't do something about it, what's going to end up happening? I'm going to take that same baggage that weighs me down, and I'm going to hand it off to my kids, to my siblings. We're going to create even more of this baggage. We're going to keep passing it down. And so I need to be willing to stop the cycle, to recognize that I have baggage and where it's coming from, and say, no more. It stops with me. We're not doing this anymore. There's an old preacher story about a little girl that was watching her mom cook the Sunday lunch. The whole family, the extended family was over at the house for Sunday lunch, and she was cooking and had this big ham that she was going to put in the oven. And as she's getting everything ready and getting it all prepared, before she puts it in the pan to put in the oven, she cuts off a significant chunk of one side of it before she puts it in the oven. And her little girl's watching. She says, Mom, why did you do that? Why did you cut off that piece of ham? She's like, well, that's how we cook it. She's like, well, why? Why do you cut that off? That's a good chunk of meat. Why do we cut that off? She's like, you know what? I don't know. That's the way my mom always did it. Let's go ask Grandma. And so they go in the other room. They ask Grandma, Grandma, why did you always cut the end off of the ham before you put it in the oven? And Grandma says, I don't know. That's what my mom always did. Let's go ask Great-Grandma. And they go, Great-Grandma's there. They go ask Great-Grandma. Great-Grandma, we're cutting the end off the ham before we put it in the oven. It started with you, apparently. Why did you do that? And Great-Grandma says, well, when Great-Grandpa and I first got married, I didn't have very many dishes. And the pan that I had to cook a ham in wasn't big enough to hold the whole ham, so I cut off the end of it before I put it in the oven. And that's what generation after generation did ever since. Now, I recognize that's a silly preacher story. But you know what? This is what we do. Why do you criticize your kids and heap guilt on them and allow depression and anger and resentment to build up in our family? Well, that's what my parents did. That's the way my mom acted. Those are the things my dad said. Well, why did he do that? Why did he treat you that way? Why did she say those words? Well, that's the kind of house that she grew up in. That's the kind of family experience that he had. Well, why? We have multiple generations of family baggage. Let's be the ones to stop the cycle. Let's be the ones to recognize and say, it ends here. We're not passing this kind of stuff on to generations after us. Romans chapter 12, verse 2, Paul says, don't conform to the pattern of this world any longer, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Basically saying, don't keep doing what the rest of the world is doing. And the way you do that is to change your mindset so that you can change your actions. And folks, I think we can take that verse and that principle and apply it to our family baggage. Don't conform to the pattern of family dynamics that has always been set for you, maybe in your own family, maybe in your family for generations up to this point. Don't keep repeating this bad process. Change your mindset, change your actions. Do things different than maybe what has been done for you. Stop the cycle. This is how we begin, folks, to let go of our family baggage. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen by the end of this service. You're not going to stand up here in a minute when we sing together and go, whew, family baggage gone. That was awesome. That'd be a miracle if it did, and I'd love for you to tell me that actually happened. But it's not going to happen that way. It takes time. It takes effort. We got to change habits. We got to change mindsets. But if I'm going to process through this and I'm going to forgive and I'm going to stop doing the things that I experience in my own family dynamics, I got to make that choice today. I can't sit there and say, okay, you know what? I'm going to work on this next week. This week's a stressful week, but next week, next month, you know what? New Year's resolution, family's going to be different. You know what, when we get to the summertime, I mean, it's really stressful right now. Got a lot of things going on at work. Kids got a lot of different school activities. So let's get to the summertime. Then I'll really start working on changing these things. You know what happens? Nothing. Nothing changes. And we keep passing our baggage on. I want to end this morning with this. I know a woman that I talked to several years ago who had some really hard feelings towards her mother about things that happened when she was growing up. And this woman was in her late 60s, early 70s, and she had some hard feelings towards her mom about things that happened when she was a kid. And her mom died. And she told me about going to the cemetery and having it out with the tombstone. Saying all the things that have been bottled up in her for so long. And just having it out with her mom in that cemetery. Now, while I think that was probably a healthy thing for her to do, to be able to let go of some of that hurt and some of those feelings that she had bottled up and carried with her for so long. I think that was good that she found a way to start letting go of some of those things. But how much time did she miss out on with her mom while she was still alive for not dealing with it then? And I don't want to be overcritical. I don't want to pile guilt on her or anything of that nature. But I want us to recognize that we don't need to wait to start dropping this baggage. We need to start today. We need to start right now. The author of Hebrews says in Hebrews chapter 3 and verse 13, encourage one another daily as it is still called today, so that none of you may be hardened by sin's deceitfulness. Don't let today go by and you still hold on as tight as you can to the baggage that's been handed to you. Start dealing with it today. Because the longer that we hold on to it and the longer that we do nothing with it, the heavier that it gets. The harder our hearts become. The more difficult it's going to be to ever let it go. The more often we're going to pass it on to our family. Let's let go of it today. We're going to stand together in just a moment. We're going to sing a song together. And as we're singing that song, if you recognize, man, I have been carrying around baggage from my family for a long time, you're welcome to come share that with us. If you recognize, man, there are choices that I've been making, and they're not the best choices. They're not the best things that I should have been doing. And maybe if I'm honest about it, the reason I started doing those things in the first place was because of the experience that I had years ago in my family. You're welcome to share that with us. There's no judgment here. While we're standing together, if you don't even move from where you're standing, would you allow God maybe to start working on your heart today? To start allowing you to see where this baggage is coming from, how much it's affecting your life. Would you allow yourself to hear the voice of God saying, just give it to me. Just let it go. I'll help you get rid of it. Just bring it. Don't walk out of here this morning, folks, while it's still called today, carrying the same baggage you walked in here with. Jesus Christ came to set you free from sin, from guilt, from baggage. If we can help you let go of it, we want to do that. Let us know how while together we stand and sing.